Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, my child, for the mouth speaks what the heart is full of. You are on a hill in Galilee more than 2,000 years ago, surrounded by many people of faith. The sun shines on the grass, and a gentle breeze caresses your face, bringing comfort. And before you, who is standing? It is not a famous philosopher or a powerful politician, but Jesus of Nazareth, the Son of God, and he is about to deliver the most revolutionary speech in history, the Sermon on the Mount. But what is so special about it? Why, after millennia, is this sermon still so talked about? Why are the words spoken by the Son of God on that day still so relevant today? Get ready, because from now on we are embarking on a journey that will change your perspective forever. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. With these words, Jesus began to turn the world upside down, generating questions and curiosity among those present. But after all, what does it really mean to be poor in spirit? The answer will surprise you and make you question everything you thought you knew about success and happiness. Imagine for a moment a world where forgiveness replaces revenge, and where compassion triumphs over selfishness. A world where love conquers hate may seem impossible, but that is exactly the kind of reality Jesus was proposing in the Sermon on the Mount. In a time torn apart by conflicts, divisions, and hatred, the teachings of the Sermon on the Mount offer an alternative way of living that can heal broken relationships, bring peace to hopeless situations, and transform entire communities, restoring lives. Throughout history, you have heard, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, my child, do not bow to evil. With these words, Jesus was not only teaching us forgiveness, but also challenging the entire value system of that time. He was proposing a completely new way of relating to one another and to God himself. Jesus went up the mountain and sat down. His disciples came to him, and he began to teach them. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Matthew chapter 5, verse 3. It seems very contradictory, but what Jesus wants to tell us is that blessed is the one who recognizes their need for spiritual evolution, who has humility, and knows that they do not have all the answers and need God. This is the first step toward the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Matthew chapter 5, verse 4. At this moment, it becomes very clear that Jesus gives us permission not to be perfect, regardless of what the world tells us. There is normalcy in crying and suffering, just as there is normalcy in smiling and praising. This is part of life, and comfort is not an invitation to pessimism, but a clear understanding that pain is part of life and that God is with us. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Matthew chapter 5, verse 5. In a world where conquest often requires aggression, Jesus challenges this by affirming that mentality overcomes physical strength. Therefore, to be meek means to be strong in spirit and to have strength under control. Even when we can and have the power to retaliate, we choose not to. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Matthew chapter 5, verse 6. This is not something superficial. At this moment, Jesus is speaking about having a deep longing, an intrinsic call for change, and from there, working actively for a better world. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Matthew chapter 5, verse 7. Mercy cannot be just a feeling, but an action. If we choose to forgive when we have the right to hold a grudge, we are able to follow Jesus. Compassion must overcome the need for revenge. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Matthew chapter 5, verse 8. Here Jesus speaks about integrity, about being the same person in the darkness as you are in public, being fair and honest with yourself and with others. My child, you have heard, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I tell you, do not bow to evil. If someone strikes you on the right cheek, offer them the other also. Matthew chapter 5, verses 38 and 39. Jesus proposes that we set aside revenge and hatred, regardless of who or why someone has caused harm. The issue at hand is not honor, but breaking the cycle of violence. After all, without this breaking, terrible things happen. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. When we choose to offer the other cheek, we declare that the violence ends at that moment, as we will not perpetuate the act. Love your enemies, bless those who curse you, do good to those who hate you, and pray for those who mistreat and persecute you. Matthew chapter 5, verse 44. Even though it goes against every natural instinct of our species, Jesus explains that we must do this because you will be children of your Father in heaven, who causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. Matthew chapter 5, verse 45. In another fascinating moment of the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus says, "Do not judge, or you too will be judged." Matthew chapter 7, verse 1. Obviously, this might seem like an invitation to abandon moral standards, but what Jesus is really saying is that we should not make hypocritical and arrogant judgments. It's not about turning a blind eye to reality or ignoring others' faults, but about starting by examining our own hearts, and then, if necessary, approaching others with compassion and humility, not with moral superiority or arrogance. Jesus continues with one of his most well-known teachings. So in everything, do to others what you would have them do to you, for this sums up the law and the prophets. Matthew chapter 7, verse 12. Here Jesus challenges us to have active empathy and put ourselves in the shoes of others, asking ourselves, how would I like to be treated in this situation? And then act accordingly. Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Matthew chapter 6, verse 25. Here Jesus encourages us not to let paralyzing anxiety consume our lives, and he uses examples from nature to illustrate this. Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they? Matthew chapter 6, verse 26. It doesn't mean we should be passive, but rather trust in the Father and the love he has for us, as not everything is under our control. But seek first the God and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Matthew chapter 6, verse 33. Here Jesus tells us to put God first, seek his righteousness, and follow his will, and he will take care of everything. In one of the most challenging parts of the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus says, "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moths and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moths and rust do not destroy, and where thieves do not break in and steal." Matthew chapter 6, verses 19 and 20. Here Jesus offers a profound challenge about what we are truly valuing, where we are investing our lives and our time. He doesn't say it's right or wrong, but he invites us to think beyond the obvious. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Matthew chapter 6, verse 21. In other words, what we value shapes who we are, and consequently who we are becoming. No one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. Matthew chapter 6, verse 24. Jesus does not mean that money is evil, but rather the obsession with material things. The pursuit of money can become the master of our lives, and when that happens, there is no room left for God. The most well-known and beautiful part of the Sermon on the Mount is, of course, the Lord's Prayer. At that time, God was seen as a fierce and distant being, but Jesus teaches us to address God as a Father loving and merciful. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Matthew chapter 6, verse 9. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Matthew chapter 6, verse 10. Give us today our daily bread. Matthew chapter 6, verse 11. And forgive us our debts as we also have forgiven our debtors. Matthew chapter 6, verse 12. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Matthew chapter 6, verse 13. This seemingly simple prayer covers all aspects of life. It helps us understand that we must have great respect for others, and when we speak the Father's name, it is his will that should be done, not ours, regardless of the size of our faith. We are reminded to trust in God daily, and that in order to experience God's forgiveness, we must also forgive those who have wronged us. It acknowledges that we are flawed, and as a life is a struggle, and we must always have the humility to ask for God's forgiveness. In another part of the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus says, "Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house. Yet it did not fall, because it had its foundation on the rock. Matthew chapter 7, verses 24 and 25. Jesus is affirming that living according to his teachings gives us a solid foundation. Following his words provides us with stability and strength to face the storms of life. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash. Matthew chapter 7, verses 26 and 27. Jesus' message to those people was clear. It is not enough to just hear. It is necessary to apply and follow the teachings. Jesus does not promise a life without difficulties for those who follow the word of the Lord. The difference lies in the ability to stand firm amid the storms, because sooner or later they will arise. The Sermon on the Mount was not just a set of rules, but a call to a completely new way of living. Enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate, and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate, and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find it. Matthew chapter 7, verses 13 and 14. Jesus tells us that there is a path to true life, with freedom and peace. But don't be mistaken, it is a daily challenge. It means choosing love when it would be easier to choose hate, choosing forgiveness when revenge would be easier, choosing generosity when it would be much easier to be selfish. But no matter how difficult, this path leads to abundant life. Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. Matthew chapter 5, verse 44. Jesus is not leading us to approve of others' wrong behaviors, but to break the cycle of hatred and revenge. We must have discernment between right and wrong, but above all, understand that if we have empathy for others and compassion for their mistakes, we can maturely comprehend that the evil we harbor returns to us and the world. We are all flawed. Remember, we are not in this struggle alone, and lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Matthew chapter 6, verse 13. We can all ask for God's help to resist when we are about to fall into temptation. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus clarifies this, "But I tell you that everyone will have to give account on the day of judgment for every careless word they have spoken." Matthew chapter 12, verse 36. Therefore, this completely changes how we act daily. Our conversations take on a new perspective. What comes out of our mouths has immense power to hurt or heal, encourage and build up those around you. Jesus emphasized the power of words in our lives during the Sermon on the Mount. Remember, our words are a reflection of our hearts. Jesus says in the Sermon on the Mount, "For the mouth speaks what the heart is full of." Matthew chapter 12, verse 34. Your heart is your garden, so you must cultivate it with good things, full of love, compassion, and truth. This way, you hold the key to communication that honors God. Thank you for staying with us until now. Subscribe to the channel, like, and share this video to help us out.